Welcome back to the Union Show. In this segment, we continue our discussion with Paul Watson, but we also talk to a man with a very interesting name, Noah Hannibal. And can you believe that a man with the name Hannibal is actually involved in animal liberation in Victoria? I tell the truth. Here's what they had to say.
I think how we're different than other organizations is that first we're only involved with direct intervention. We're not protesting. We're not a protest organization. We intervene against clearly illegal activities. And also we're really not too concerned about what people think about us, so they can criticize us all they want. I mean, we just got condemned by the International Whaling Commission. Well, great, while they're sitting in London condemning us, we're down there saving whales. As I always put it, find me one whale that disagrees with what we're doing and we might reconsider, but quite frankly, I don't really care what people have to say about us. We've had an incredible support from the trade unions here in Australia, and right from the moment that we first came into Melbourne 3 years ago. And they've been very supportive, even providing volunteers to the crew. We've flown the electrical workers, construction workers flags and that, and so we're quite proud to be associated with the different trade unions that have been helping us out. The more support we get, the stronger that we become, and we're sort of handicapped in a way because we don't spend money on soliciting or advertising or whatever, so it's sort of word of mouth, so we've grown very slowly, and we're not about to spend money on this kind of advertising and door-to-door publicity. Like for instance, Greenpeace, which I'm a co-founder of and I call it the world's greatest feel-good organization, spends $70 million a year raising money. They bought up all of the advertising space, online space for The Age in New Zealand, every New Zealand, Australian newspaper from December until the middle of March. So even when they're not down there, we're down there, and every time an article comes up, right beside it, up comes a thing, send money to Greenpeace, send money to Greenpeace. They're raising money even when we're going down there to do things. But that's what they're investing their money in. I call them the other whaling industry because they bring in $30–40 million a year just on whaling alone, and probably be upset if we were to shut down whaling. That's probably one of the reasons they don't like us. I mean, they don't even have a position on anything anymore. I call them ocean posers. They just go down there, get their pictures, get their story, and bang, let's send that out into a 50 million piece mail out and raise money on it. Get it on the internet. Let's start making money. That's what it's all about. Images, stories, and posing. They don't seriously want to end whaling. They really don't. In fact, all of us who are the original co-founders and original members of Greenpeace, we're not even allowed in the front door of that organization, which, by the way, if you go to Greenpeace headquarters in Amsterdam, looks like IBM Central with a solid granite thing with gold embossed letters and Greenpeace outside of it and a $60 million office building. I mean, this is what they are doing with their money. And this is not what we envisioned when we set up Greenpeace. That's when I left Greenpeace. This is why I decided that we were going to have a small organization and keep it small because it becomes more effective. We're not going to be dictated to as to what and when we can do it by people's opinions. When people call up and say, well, I disagree with what you did, I said, well, fine, go join another organization. This is what we do. You either support us or you don't support us. But if you want to be a big organization, you have to compromise every principle you have because you can't be all things to all people. We're the only organization that's banned from attending the meetings of the International Whaling Commission, have been since 1987, because they're the only organization that upholds the laws of the International Whaling Commission. They just condemned us, and they said, well, what's your response to the IWC condemning you? Well, the IWC condemned the Japanese last year for whaling in Antarctica. It didn't do any good, and what's an IWC condemnation of us going to do? It's not going to stop us. Well, they're sitting in London condemning us. We're down there saving whales, so I really don't care about their condemnation. The last time I went to an IWC meeting was in Monaco in 1997, only because Prince Albert and Prince Rainier are Sea Shepherd supporters. Probably the greatest honor that I ever received was walking into that meeting and have the entire Japanese, Icelandic, and Norwegian delegates all walk out in protest. 300 people walked out in protest. John Frizzell from Greenpeace, who I actually hired for Greenpeace originally, but he's now a big executive with them, and he came up and he said, well, I never thought I'd see you here, Paul. And I said, well, why is that, John? He says, well, you're not welcome. You're not invited here. You shouldn't be here. And he says, it's not polite to show up at places you're not welcome. I said, gee, I thought that's what Greenpeace was all about, setting up. And so he said, well, I think that, you should realize that people disagree with your tactics. I said, John, find me a whale that disagrees with what we do, and I might think about it. Most environmental bureaucrats are sort of like politicians. They don't look more than 5 years ahead in the future, if that. And when you start looking into the future of this century, you're going to see some really scary things. I see wars by 2030 over water. Canada and the United States are going to go to war over it. I see wars over the resources of Antarctica. and certainly the oil wars, which we're experiencing right now. But we're in what Richard Leakey describes as the 6th major extinction event in world history. We're going to lose more species of plants and animals in a 65-year period between 1980 and 2045 than we've lost in the last 65 million years. It's an unprecedented situation to be in. What are we doing about it? Absolutely nothing. We're not doing anything about global warming. Everybody's talking about it, and the environmental groups are making a fortune on it. Environmentalism has become a business. You know, it's sort of like, let's take this and let's see what we can get out of it, because we're going to be the conscience of the people, we're going to make people feel good about it, and that's pretty much it. But when I was the director of the Sierra Club for 3 years, I said, what's all this stuff about global warming? You know, you're not going to prevent it. It's already started. Why don't you teach people how to adapt to it? But the fact that, oh, we're going to stop global warming, no, you're not. Because look at Al Gore's movie, Inconvenient Truth. Even he, who everybody thinks is the greatest environmental hero on the planet, doesn't even mention meat consumption as a source of greenhouse gas emissions. And the greenhouse gas emissions from the meat industry are more than the automobile industry. He's a cattle rancher. He owns shares in a tobacco company. He owns shares in a petroleum company, and he's telling me that I have to have a shallow ecological footprint, and everybody says, oh my, let's give him the Nobel Prize. You know, the thing is, it's just that we live in a world of hypocrisy here. And this is why our ships are vegan vessels. You know, everybody says, well, what's that got to do with anything? Well, you know, a vegan driving a Hummer contributes less to greenhouse gas emissions than a meat eater riding a bicycle. And but we don't want to see the truth. That's the real inconvenient truth. We don't want to see it. But people aren't going to stop driving their cars tomorrow, and they're not going to stop eating steak, and they're not going to stop eating fish. Every single commercial fishery in the world is in a state of economic collapse. Right now, we're fighting poachers in the Galapagos National Park, Cocos Island National Park. They're moving into marine reserves. That's where we're fighting them. No, we're not fighting them out there in the fishing grounds. We're fighting them in the protected areas. We've busted 65 poachers in the national parks. I mean, one of the reasons I wear a Kevlar vest, it had nothing to do with the Japanese, is that we busted the shark fin mafia last year in Ecuador and seized 45,000 shark fins and arrested the 12 top ringleaders there, because we're working in partnership with the Ecuadorian National Environmental Police, and they put out a contract on me, so I wear that thing all the time. But it's a prolonged campaign, but as long as we keep the pressure on, I think